Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. In this, our 5th season, we are looking at Joe Johnston's 2011 film Captain America, The First Avenger. I'm Andy Nelson from the Next Reel Film Podcast.
And I'm Pete Wright, and I'm the Fire Soldier.
Today we're talking about Minute 97, which begins with the Allies invading the Hydra compound and ends with Cap pinned down by the Flame Trooper. Back on the show, it's Nate, Bubbawheat, Withrow. Hello, Nate.
Is it getting hot in here?
Yeah, right? No kidding. All right, so this minute starts off, we're following the troops, and I am just wondering, what happened to Marita and Jones? Where did those two go? And it's weird because, as we saw, Jones came in with Falsworth and Dum Dum, Marita came in with Dernier, and now we have Dernier who's joined up with Falsworth and Dum Dum. So where are those two? And I can't help but feel like there's a story thread that was cut out of this. Does it feel weird that suddenly, like, we're not seeing two of the team, or are we just meant to so completely lose focus on all of them and just focus on Captain America at this point that it doesn't matter?
I'm not thinking about him at all.
Yeah, I just feel like, this is just getting into the chaos of the battle, and they're just not following through with continuity. Could even possibly be due to maybe the actors' schedules.
Well, yeah, that's actually a point I hadn't thought of. It's so weird to me that it's Dum Dum and Falsworth with Dernier. It's like, where did Jones go? It's just weird to me that suddenly our group has shifted. And again, it's a very minor note because they all kind of disappear largely. And I as I said in our last minute, what we're really doing as this, this invasion happens, we're slowly whittling characters out as we get closer and closer to the point where it's really just kind of our antagonist and our protagonist together. But to that end, yesterday's minute is the last time that Steve ever saw any of the Howling Commandos.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, when Falsworth throws him his shield, that's the last thing he ever hears of them.
Wow.
Isn't that sad?
Yeah, that's sad.
Jeez.
They didn't even know.
Yeah.
My next question, is Peggy underdressed for battle?
Yeah, everybody else gets real uniforms, and Peggy's in
and
her,
helmets,
dress leathers.
It almost looks like riding chaps or something. Of what is she doing?
What is she doing? So a thing strikes me. Can we transition just briefly to the blue goo, to the blue splody weapons?
Blue splody. All right, let's talk about blue splody.
All right. Number one, I made a comment based on what we had seen at the time yesterday about how there is no blue blowback, like when there's one blue beam for one target. And I am mistaken. As it turns out, if you frame by frame, right around second 32, Schmidt shoots a soldier, and that soldier blows up, and then the blue continues and blows up the soldier behind him. He's got a 2-for-1. We do have precedent-setting 2-for-1 blue goo explosion and disintegration.
Yeah, I actually had that in my notes too. I didn't frame by frame it, but I was watching it several times over, and I was trying to figure out if he fired 4 shots or if he fired just the 3 shots and took out 4 of them.
He takes out 4 guys. That is fascinating. Now, there is a certain reputational argument about these guns. If you notice what happens when all of the Axis ally soldiers are running into the base, the Hydra soldiers are disintegrating all of them. And when the Hydra soldiers die, they just are dead on the ground. So a battle scene against a blue splody weapon enabled Hydra force ends up looking like the Hydra weapons were really bullied because there are no dead American soldiers, just dead Hydra soldiers. And you have to wonder if that's part of Schmidt's plan. Maybe he's doing this as a PR effort too. There's something about it. Maybe we'll look much better if it just looks like we're constantly being picked on by a superior force.
That is a strange motivation.
It would be very
especially
strange.
Coming from Schmidt.
I also find it interesting. Do you think that the blue splody substance, the Tesseract substance that's coming out of these guns, is more or less powerful depending on the size of the gun that you're wielding.
Like, is Schmidt's pistol kicking off as much of a blast as the big arnimulation?
That is my question. That is my principal question, because why does he's holding his little gun, which does the same thing, right? He shoots somebody, he disappears, right?
But I don't think, well, and it's interesting because when he wields the arnimulation weapon, he seems to at least know how to use it, because he pulls the trigger and manages to, tick off a whole bunch of rounds that his troopers outside don't seem to be able to do. Like, they're just like, shoot once, and now I'm going to aim, and now I'm going to shoot again. Like, they are very slow with the way that they kind of shoot through things. So it's kind of, I don't know, it is a peculiar thing.
He's just better at it.
Yeah, he's firing it like a semi-automatic.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, I don't really know. That's an interesting point. And also, why are the American soldiers who survive, once they kill them, why don't they pick up more of the arnimulation assault weapons?
Oh, that's a much bigger question.
Yeah, I was curious about that too, because there's like hardly anybody on the Allied side, and they've been taking out these Hydra weapons factories for the past 20 minutes.
Yeah, right.
And you would think that, even if they have a limited battery, they would be able to get at least some use out of them, other than like more than just giving a couple of them to Howard Stark.
Yeah, right. It's interesting. The guns themselves, I mean, Schmidt picks one up off the floor to start blasting at people, and he doesn't have the backpack that goes along with it. I wonder if all of the other troopers, like, I don't know, do they work for a limited time when they're not? I assume I never see like a cable running from the Hydra troopers' guns to their little blue backpacks that they're all running around with, but I assume they must have something that's kind of feeding the continuous energy into the guns. So maybe the one that Schmidt picks up has just like a few shots left, and he's able to get the rounds off before it dries up. I don't really know. Actually, now that I think
dries up.
Well, I mean, what does it do? Like, once it shoots all of the blue goo.
I think that's a really good question.
Maybe the backpack just has, a bunch of those little battery pack lens flares.
It's just a pack of flares. So here's my other question. Well, first of all, I when I first was watching this and I saw all of these explosions that suddenly go off outside, I was like, well, wait a minute. There's the front door, and the front door looks totally fine. Didn't Steve already, quote, knock on the front door? And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. There is a hole in the front door from where he crashed his motorcycle into it. I was very excited to see that there is continuity with that we do see where his motorcycle blew a hole in the door.
Blew up, yeah.
My question for you, though, and I find this very strange, because we have this attack happening where all of the soldiers are outside, and the music kind of builds to this moment, and right around second 17, 18, a truck explodes, and then suddenly, like, all of the trucks explode, and the music kind of had stopped. It was like this crescendo of a whole bunch of explosions that happen outside, and that's when we cut inside and we see a couple explosions go off in the hallway in front of Red Skull. But it felt like so deliberately done. Like, were we meant to think that, oh, this is the turn of the war or something like that? It was a strange moment, but especially with the music peaking as the explosions start happening. Did either of you notice that, as far as the way the explosions were timed and suddenly how everything kind of shifted?
Well, it is a hero moment, right? I mean, I think we are supposed to have that, start feeling that twist as everybody runs in.
But why a bunch of explosions? It's not like we see a demolitions expert running in and planting a bunch of bombs that then all go off at the same time. But it feels like that's what we were meant to think.
Yeah.
And we also don't see any heavy machinery coming in after them. We only see foot soldiers.
Yeah, like it could have been like, oh, here comes the armada of tanks coming in to turn the tide or something.
Yeah.
It's a weird little moment. I honestly, the more I watch this in minute chunks, I find a lot of the action sequences a little frustrating. My other question is, why is Schmidt running to the front door?
What do you mean?
He just went down 4,000 feet, as we determined in yesterday's minute,
Yes,
from his office down to the front door, only to find the Allies knocking, and then he turns, and now he's like,
God, they're here.
oh, I guess I'll go to my plane back up on the 3,500th floor.
Yeah.
wherever it is.
That's okay. That's amazing. I guess you're right. We really poked a hole in this one.
I just don't know. Like, where is he going? Was this the shortcut?
Yes, he was. He missed apparently the slidey into the slide into the ball pit has been detonated by the invisible munitions expert. He had to walk.
Yeah, so Schmidt now turns tail again, and now he's going to go back up to his airplane. I don't know what's going on with this. Sometimes I look at this and I'm like, it's designed as if it's all on the same floor, and that's, I think, a struggle I have because it's forest, it's like lush green forest on one end, and it's mountain peaks on the other. I can work through this. I'm going to work through this. It's going to be okay.
I think it's important to work through it so that we can get to the next shot where Cap is chasing him down the hallway, and we can talk about my next complaint.
Okay, before we do, Bubbawheat, do you have anything about any of this stuff at the beginning of the minute, the first 30 seconds?
Yeah, not really. I mean, it's from my point of view, like I was watching it just feels like, a full 30 seconds of a bunch of running and blue and orange flashes.
And then, of course, we do have the moment we should just call out, Pete. Before we get to Red Skull and Captain America in the hallway together, we have the Hydra troopers run around the corner, and one of them decides this is the time where I'm going to yell our catchphrase. And he's like, cut off one head, two more shall. And then, of course, Colonel Phillips takes him down and says, let's go find two more. I do want to call this out just because this is the one actor who is credited as a Hydra guard. He also is credited as a Hydra pilot, although we'll never know which because their faces are completely covered up in their GIMP outfits. But this is Benjamin Utley. Benjamin Utley is the guard who does scream that out at the team before he gets taken down. I'm going to do the IMDb game with you, but I'm going to just tell you what his known fors are, because I'm guessing you probably aren't sure.
Seems like a short game, but okay.
I'm a big fan of the actor whose name I've already forgotten.
Benjamin Utley. He dies well here. He is a British actor here working on this film, and this is number one of his four known fors, followed by a film he was actually a producer for called Silver Spitfire, The Longest Flight, which is a documentary that he wrote and directed about a British expeditionary team that attempts the world's first circumnavigation of the Earth in an 80-year-old vintage World War II fighter to inspire a new generation through the freedom of flight. Anyway, that's number two. Number three, he was part of the additional crew on the film Wimbledon, the, what's his name, Kirsten Dunst, Paul Bettany film, the tennis film.
Yeah, right.
And last but not least, he plays a Vogon soldier in The Hitchhiker's Guide.
Oh, Hitchhiker.
Yeah.
I knew I recognized him somewhere.
So that's Benjamin Utley. And alas, we barely got to know you before you were shot by Colonel Phillips.
Alas.
And, of course, Colonel Phillips has his quippy line.
Which is the best.
Let's go find two more.
I love that. So I also love just his arc in this movie. Just going from this put upon colonel, and it doesn't want Rogers to begin with. And then he starts to develop, appreciation for him. And now at this point, he's basically following him.
Do you feel like his turn came too early in the film?
No, I don't think so. I think I really felt like it was an organic process with him just developing, a little bit more respect as with each scene that they have together.
Yeah, that was kind of a struggle I had in the when Steve brings back the troops in the middle of the film. And Colonel Phillips kind of had his faith, and he seemed to kind of have made his switch. But I guess I can see your point. It's like he slowly, over the course of it, is giving Steve more and more work. And here he's now not just giving Steve work, but he's literally following Steve into battle. So
yeah, it's good. It's like that good twist of faith.
Yeah, right.
In his soldiering.
Do you like Tommy Lee Jones as an actor?
Oh, definitely. I can't think of a role that well, I take that back. I can only think of one role that I'm not too big on him, and that's Batman Forever.
Shocked, I tell you. I am shocked.
That was a big role for him. And when I say big, I mean he was putting
what exactly
a lot out.
Do you mean
putting a lot out in that performance. All right. So, Pete, let's talk about Captain America and Red Skull in the hallway.
Do you know what? This is the thing. We've been talking so much about the blue splody weapons. Okay, we have the chase down the hallway. The Cap throws the shield. I actually like that. I like that Cap is in there and he's running down the hallway and he throws it and it bounces and it stops the door from closing. All that is fine. The problem that I have with it is I no longer believe in the utility of the flame soldier, and I struggle with why they even exist on the Hydra team. Why not just have the same flame soldier but replace his weapons with the blue splody goo and let him just blow stuff up? Like, it feels like that's why are we still dealing with fire in this man's Hydra? I just can't get it. It was a cool effect. It was a very cool effect when we first entrapped Cap when he was outside. Maybe not believable, but at this point, I'm done with the flame soldier. I don't feel like it's that good of a particular munition for Hydra at this point.
Yeah, and I don't know if you talked about it during the first instance of the flame soldiers, but the typical amount of fuel for a flamethrower of this era is on average about 6 seconds and at most about 10 seconds. So if he just waited 2 more seconds, he would have ran out of fuel.
Would have run out. Exactly.
Well, this is the other thing. This was my complaint, is that, he blasts his fire at Steve. One, he just stands still. Just keep walking. Like, why do you have to? Do you have to stand still when you're blasting your flames?
Apparently.
And two, like, why does he just shoot it up the hallway instead of like, well, okay, Steve went and hid behind the door. Well, I'm going to angle so at least I'm hitting the wall next to him or something. Like, it's strange that these people just seem to be only able to shoot in one very specific direction and can't move when they're shooting.
Yeah, I don't love it.
They can only shoot cinematically.
Yeah.
Right. It's part of the training.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, here's a note. Maybe this is why he doesn't blast where Steve goes, because the German sign on the wall next to Steve says Special Service Department, entry for authorized personnel only, caution, explosives. So maybe he knows that, this is a room full of explosives, and if he angles his flamethrower toward it, he may set everything off. Little reaching there.
Really great that we just have these rogue flame soldiers wandering in any proximity at all to entire rooms dedicated to explosives.
Well, as we saw in the factory floor, we didn't see a flame trooper there, but we did see just boxes of explosives just randomly sitting on the by the walls. So, yeah, it's strange how they keep things here. All right. Well, I don't know if I have anything else for this particular minute. Do either of you?
No, that's all I got.
Nothing for me.
All right. Well, Peggy arrives. We'll talk more about that in tomorrow's minute. So, Nate, tell everybody again about what you're up to.
Sure. Today I will talk about my Time Loop podcast, which is a Movies by Minutes adjacent format. And, I'm 4 seasons in. I'm about to... I'm 4 seasons in at this point. I alternate between movies and TV shows, and I take a time loop story, and each episode talks about one loop in that time loop. So it's the chunk can be anywhere between 15 and 20 minutes to 1 second for the frequent montages, which I honestly do enjoy recording the montage segments whenever you're only dealing with just a few seconds of footage in these montage scenes. And it's Time to Rewind, and you can find that on anchor.fm. And again, with everything that I do, you can, if you follow me on Twitter where I'm at Bubbawheat, that's the best place to find me and my work.
Where did Bubbawheat come from?
It's an online name that I've had for probably over 20 years now. Like back whenever I first got like AOL 3.1, I got my first email address and AOL screen name, and I desperately wanted to have something that didn't have any numbers. And so this was like probably 20th on my list. I went through the fantasy names, and then I eventually got around to like stand-up comedy and I can't think of his name, but the redneck comedian at the time that had all the redneck words.
You might be a redneck.
You might be a redneck gift. Yeah.
Jeff, that Jeff?
Jeff Foxworthy.
Foxworthy, yeah.
And so I went, my funny made up redneck name was Billy Bob Joe Buckwheat. And so I shortened that down to Bubbawheat, and I got that with no numbers, and I've been using that ever since. And, it's a unique name and nobody else has copied it. So the fact that if you do a search, if you do a search for Bubbawheat, one word, and 95% of that is all me.
Wow. That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we'll put links to your stuff in the show notes so everyone can check those out. Check that stuff out, everybody. And we'll be back tomorrow to talk about Minute 98. So, Pete, thanks as always.
I was gonna do a bit about my early screen name, but it's not appropriate anymore. Bye, everybody.
Until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM. Engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is Spread the News by Anthony Vega, and this season's show art is by Winston Yabo. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, consider doing that for this show.